What's up, everybody? Welcome back inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for a practice report presented by Byers Auto. That's the 40-year vet Tim May. I'm Spencer Holbrook. Tim, we just heard from Ryan Day, the head coach of this program here, Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, and Kevin Wilson, the offensive coordinator / tight ends coach.
Yeah.
A lot to take away after the off week for Ohio State, the bye week, the idle week, whatever you want to call it. Now as Ohio State moves forward and spins this thing toward a matchup with Iowa, defensive juggernaut Iowa. What did you learn, Tim, from this program today as we broke things down with Ryan Day and the Buckeyes?
The number one thing I learned, and was interesting, was someone brought up the 55-24 bushwhacking Ohio State suffered when they went to Iowa. And I don't know what else you would call it. When they went to Iowa in 2017, it was a pick six right at the beginning of that game. J.T. Barrett, known for being as careful with the football as almost anybody who's ever played here, throws a pick six, and boom, that game just got flipped immediately. And Ryan Day made an interesting point. He said, that's a scar. Yeah. That when you lose a game like that, it leaves a mark. So here comes Iowa with the worst offense in major college football right now in the FBS, averaging 238.7 yards per game. Ohio State is averaging 2.3 or 2.4 more yards per game, 2.3 times more yards per game than Iowa is. But of course, Iowa, its shot in this thing is to make it a long slug, both offensively trying to move the ball against Ohio State's defense, and then basically making it tough on this Ohio State offense. So you know that when the head coach says that's a scar, that resonated with him, and a lot of times you want to heal that scar if you can.
Yeah, this is a rematch, Tim, that's 5 years in the making for Ryan Day, for Kevin
Correct.
Wilson. Brian Hartline was on the staff. Tony Alford was on the staff.
Ryan Day's first year on the staff in 2017. Exactly.
Larry Johnson was on that staff. A lot of these coaches remember exactly what happened. And, to be frank, a lot of these recruits a lot of these guys in the locker room probably remember that day as an upset that they probably watched. Because that was a big game for Ohio State after, moving up in those polls and that Penn State matchup, that really famous, incredible performance by those Buckeyes in the fourth quarter against Penn State, turn around and do that against Iowa. I know I was shocked, Tim. I'm sure you were there in Iowa City.
Yeah.
You were pretty shocked. But that's 5 years ago, Tim. And I know that the scars are there for Ryan Day and for this coaching staff, but these are two completely different teams, two different offenses for sure. And Ohio State has a defense that I don't think is planning on giving up 55 points. It's got an offense that it's going to be really hard for Iowa to stop it from scoring more than 24. Are there the scars there? Yes. But for the players, none of them were on the team. And so it is an interesting dynamic of coaches remember it, players may, but probably not.
Yeah, but Ryan Day said not only has he remembered, he's reminded his staff of it this week, the last week and a half, and he's reminded his players. Mm-hmm. I mean, So he's making a big deal about it. That's the head coach. That's not me. That's not you. He's reminding his players and staff of this is what can happen when you take your eye off the ball. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing, the only really similarity between Iowa's offense from that day and now is that at least they're still getting passes thrown to their tight ends. I mean, Ohio State, that 2017 Ohio State defense seemed like it had never even come up with the idea or the thinking that the tight end could catch a football. And boy, Noah Fant and all those guys just went off on Ohio State's, I think it was Noah Fant. I think it was his first name. Yep. But they just went off. I mean, it was a tight end jamboree. Obviously, one of the tight ends on this Iowa team is Luke Lachey, son of Jim Lachey, former All-American at Ohio State, former All-Pro with the what was then the Washington Redskins, et cetera. And now the color analyst for the radio play-by-play along with Paul Keels for Ohio State. But this kid, people saw him grow up in Grandview, Ohio, opted to go to Iowa, and he's getting utilized in that offense. That's one of the few talking points that Iowa can point to in a positive way of getting things done. But they're going to come in here with a plan, and one part of that plan is what I just alluded to, which is why we asked a lot about the Iowa defense. Is that Iowa defense has got to do a number on the number 2 total offense in the country, which is Ohio State's, and the number 1 scoring offense in the country, which is Ohio State. So that's basically the groundwork for this game that's coming.
Yeah, the blueprint's not hard, Tim. This is not we're not going to break any new ground on this show. Iowa's defense is good, and their offense is horrible. If that offense can sustain a drive against this Ohio State defense, We'll keep C.J. Stroud off the field, and then Iowa's defense will try to do what it does best. The blueprint is not hard. For Ohio State, it is going to be difficult to try to move the ball in this Iowa defense. And for Ohio State's defense, if you're in the right gaps and you play an average game, you're going to have some success against an offense like Iowa's.
Yeah.
But that's the challenge for Ohio State, is get the Iowa offense off the field as soon as possible with 3 and outs like you should. It's not like you can, it's like you should with this kind of offense.
Yeah.
And then for the Ohio State offense, move the ball and crack pick that lock like you've said, that Iowa Phil Parker defense.
Safe.
Crack that safe, pick that lock, whatever metaphor you want to use. This is not, and there's a lot of times where we stand here on these fields and break down what Ryan Day said. What does it all mean? This is not difficult.
Hey, when the head coach though says it left a scar, I mean, yeah. When you look at it on paper, this is, cut and dried. I mean, even the odds makers have Ohio State, a 29-point favorite as we speak now.
It's a big number.
It's a big number. That's 4 touchdowns. That's more than Iowa is averaging scoring per game.
Per 2 games.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so we all understand that. But the point is, it's Ryan Day. Part of his job, the main part of his job is for keeping his team's eye on the ball.
Yeah.
And because anybody who watched football over the weekend knows stuff can happen in college football.
Oh, yeah.
There were no, are you kidding me, upsets that what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 2, basically teams going against each other over the weekend of almost equal talent. And boy, you take your eye off the ball 1 second and boom, you've lost it. Ohio State would have to have a major gaffe on Saturday to lose it, but it can happen. We've seen it happen.
Yeah.
And so that's his point. I mean, the Iowa game and then the Purdue game the next year were just great examples of this is a 12-game slugfest to go to the Big Ten championship game if you take care of business and then move on from there. And that's the point he's making. You knew he was going to make it this week because they had the week off last week. And so that's what's standing out to me. The other thing standing out is he has not come out and said Jackson Smith and Jigba, or JSN, as our buddy Adam King called him to Kevin Wilson, who thought that was radio call letters, was interesting. But is Jackson Smith and Jigba finally going to play this week after being off since the Toledo game when he restrained his hamstring? Those are the kind of the questions that you're not going to know the answers to probably officially until Saturday.
Saturday by 9 a.m.
But it is just amazing how much better, like we talked about yesterday, how much better this team can be on Saturday than it was the last time you saw them when they played at Michigan State. From an offensive standpoint, if they get both him and Mayan Williams back, who has that kind of cavalry coming over the hill? But Ohio State does. I mean, this is an offense could be much better. Well, on paper, can be better than it was 2 weeks ago. I mean, those are the kind of things that are intriguing, but we're not getting answers to those. The more we're looking right now is what is the motivation for this team? How does it get psyched? How does it get fired up to take on an Iowa team before it goes to one of the first real showdowns of the year at Happy Valley against Penn State?
Yeah, I guess the point that I was trying to convey there, Tim. Maybe I didn't do a good job of it. Now that
no, you did a good job. I'm with you.
Ryan Day made it very clear. Iowa has a plan, and they know exactly how to execute. They do fundamentals. They keep the ball out of your hands. They try to methodically move the ball, and they play really good defense. So the blueprint for both sides is not difficult to figure out. The motivation for both sides is not difficult to figure out. Iowa, can you get off the mat? You just had an off week. You're 3-3. Everyone says you suck because your offense does suck. Can you get off the mat? Ohio State.
I say stink, but you say suck.
Yeah, they stink there. Ohio State, for your motivation, you've got a trip to Penn State next week. That's a huge one. What are you going to do against the 3-3 Iowa bunch? It would make their season. It would turn their entire season outlook around to get an upset win.
Kind of like the flip side of that game in 2017. Ohio State was, like you said, was coming off that great win at Penn State, and boom, they're there at Iowa, and they kind of walked into that game a little bit sleepwalking and never really woke up. I'm talking about Ohio State did. But here's the point I'm making, and the point Ryan Day is making. You don't sleep on a program, and Kevin Wilson even brought it up. This team played for the Big Ten championship a year ago. Iowa did. They've got some players.
They were there.
Yeah, they played for the Big Ten championship last year. Yeah, they didn't win it. Michigan killed them. But the point is, they were good enough to win the West last year. A lot of those players are still around. They've got some quality players in their program, and if they suddenly all buy in, et cetera, it could be an interesting game.
Yeah, Tim, and like I keep saying it, but the plan is simple for Iowa. The plan is relatively simple for Ohio State. If Ohio State can get these weapons back, and I'll go a step further. We're talking about if Jackson Smith-Njigba plays. You read the tea leaves a lot of times with what Ryan Day says because he doesn't dive into injuries, and that's understandable. The way he's talked the last few weeks about Jackson and the way he talked today leads me to believe that there is a very good chance Jackson Smith-Njigba could play on Saturday. And, that's just, maybe I'm stealing those from recruiting guys who say read the tea leaves because I'm just kind of listening to what Ryan Day has to say and trying to, read how he says things like that. Some of the comments today about if he comes back and if he can do this, I think there's a good chance you see number 11 out there on Saturday. And if you don't see him this week, you'll see him next week at Penn State.
I'm the guy. I'm just waiting to see it happen.
Yeah,
because let's say he starts revving it up this week and whatever. That's an injury that could happen again. I mean, until you actually see him out there doing it. Like I was surprised to see him play against Toledo, coming back that quickly from the hamstring situation. So. Yeah, I think it's a bonus if he shows up. We all know what he could mean to this offense. But, what I'm writing about later in this week is this offense has moved on without him. They are not going to, if Jackson Smith-Njigba shows up on Saturday ready to play, they're not going to go into the game with the thought, okay, the first 5 passes all have to go to Jackson no matter what. Yeah. I mean, this is an offense that's really diverse now, has generated guys. I mean, a while ago we're watching Marvin Harrison Jr. and some in cohorts working on the jugs machine here right behind us. Yeah. Exactly. So this team has other weapons now it can rely on, but it's great to have that smart bomb at your disposal.
It could go off on Saturday. Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams could both be back. The full stable of running backs. You could talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba being back at full strength. Matt Jones been dealing with a little bit of an injury bug. He could have used that week off. It'll all come to a head, Tim, on Saturday in the Horseshoe at noon. Marvin Harrison, like we said, back there getting some warm-up reps in for that game. Tim and I will be there. Full coverage of Ohio State versus Iowa, again, noon on Saturday in the Horseshoe. But for Tim May, I'm Spencer Holbrook. This is a practice report presented by Byers Auto. We just talked to Ryan Day and everybody. Full coverage of all of that at LettermenRow.com in the coming days, the next week or so ahead. Busy day in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, Tim. We walked out here. Women's softball practice is going on there, getting fall season heated up. Like we said, the wide receivers are back there doing some jugs machine work, and the Buckeyes are about to take the field for practice. So I think we're getting the cue that we need to leave. So, again, for Tim May, I'm Spencer Holbrook. Make sure you come check us out on the message board, the Lettermen Lounge. We're talking about everything we just talked about here and more. We'll see you over there on the message board, and we'll see you on Wednesday back in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for another practice report presented by Byers Auto.